Okay, I'm Grant Regan, and I do reside in Canada often. I spend most of my time in the Middle East or Southeast Asia, Malaysia, Singapore, that area in particular. And most of the actual academic executive coaching time is spent in the Middle East, in mostly Abu Dhabi, a little bit in Dubai.
Are you?
Yeah, I always call myself a professional student and a coach of organization development, which is basically the organization design and development. And consequently, as a professional student, I'm always researching because it's so interesting.
From your experience, maybe even from your research, as you said, which are the main challenges organizations face today in performance management or in that area?
Well, what I look at is that I'm focused really on what I call the next billion. In other words, the target corporations or enterprises that I look at, and that's the reason I'm doing the research, is to help out the new enterprises, the new enterprises, the new departments setting up, where they're designing their new corporate culture. And so what I see worldwide, in fact, when we look at the proverbial triangle of the population, we've got 7 billion, but the lower majority, the 4 billion that are, many in fact are very lucky to even be literate, and they're looking at new enterprises as well, and enterprises. So that is where the biggest challenge is, and as we heard this morning with Mark, is the fact that a lot of the larger corporations are realizing that there's a huge market there in the trillions. These are the ones that are just emerging into not even the internet level yet. What I'm focused on is what I call the next billion. In other words, there's probably just over 1 billion on the internet now. And those are the ones that we just think everybody knows. And around the world we say, well, everybody has a smartphone. Well, no. The next billion aren't quite there yet. And those are the ones that I see there's a real urgent need, especially when the population is growing so fast. There's an urgent need for new enterprises to look at performance as their everyday life. As a businessman in Singapore said, we go for business excellence because it just makes sense. And so that's where I see the biggest challenge in performance management is the larger corporations helping the next billion or 4 billion, and those new enterprises themselves learning, because they're focused on learning the global business. And so the main thing that they are looking at is, how do we perform better? How do we go towards business excellence? And I use Singapore as an example and suggest everybody should go there at least 1 week of every year. So that's what I see as the future of performance management in the short term.
What do you believe are the key trends in performance management for 2014?
What I see, especially from this conference and moving around in different countries as well, it's what I refer back to. It's Richard Branson's B team. In other words, the focus of the Branson enterprise is looking at every corporation really should be looking at the term of CSR, or they use triple bottom line. I use quadruple bottom line, which is sort of similar, but it adds a little bit more community, maybe more staff, that sort of thing. So I see that's the trend right now, is it's corporations realizing that they're the solution for the rest of the world. It's not government. The government can't afford it. They're not versed in it. It's these larger corporations that are helping out the new up-and-coming corporations. I see that a big trend, especially here at the conference.
And if you were to give maybe 3 pieces of advice to companies on how to manage their performance, or maybe your insights about how to manage performance successfully?
Well, in a sense, I could just say one, and that's learn how to design the ideal corporate culture, because it's culture behind everything that happens. It's what makes strategy happen. So I would say that's probably the best advice, is learn as much as you can about how to design corporate culture to make it happen.
Could you tell me, please, which functional area would you maybe recommend to be looked at, to be analyzed right now, due to their particular approach to performance management and their subsequent results? Maybe an area, a functional area in industry.
Can you give me an example of what you mean?
For example, do you believe a functional area in industry right now has a really good approach to performance management right now?
Oh, there's so many and yet not enough. What I would suggest, if you're looking at performance management, and I always, as I mentioned, I feel every business person in the world should spend at least a year in Singapore. There are many examples all over the world. In fact, there's some really good corporate examples in places we wouldn't even expect it happening. But it's just that it's so concentrated in Singapore. And that's, I guess, what I would recommend is, that if people are doing research around the world, they should include researching some of the companies and the organizations in Singapore to find benchmarks of things they could be doing in their own area.
In your opinion, how can an organization ensure that it has an efficient performance management approach? Because you've mentioned earlier the importance of taking culture into account.
Mm-hmm.
And
Well, there's so many things to be looked at. In fact, when we do our research, we realize that we've actually identified, put labels on 7,600 components of an organization. And each one should be looked at because it's like any CEO that is successful has them in the back of their mind, whether they actually identify them, put a label on it, but they know the concepts. So it is pretty vast as far as understanding the corporation. There's so many components. So the more people that learn about organization design and look at some benchmarks around the world, I mean, everybody will be better off. But again, like we're all human, every individual corporation is different. So as a new CEO goes into a corporation or builds a corporation, there's so many components that should be looked at. And there's so many examples, benchmarks, in fact. There's so many tools that can be used. It's a matter of looking at them all and then deciding which of those tools are most effective in designing the corporation that you want.
What do you think about this emerging trend, of using performance measurement in your personal life? Like you'd have calorie trackers, glucometers.
Well, I try and avoid the assessment or evaluation on the individual part of it. My whole focus has always been on the group, the team, and how they work together rather than the individual. So it would only be a simple opinion, and I guess to me, the more we know, the better off we are. So if there's a measurement tool, let's check it out. Maybe it might be beneficial to us, because it is definitely for corporations. So it might be for individuals too.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.